Well, good morning and welcome to Blackstone Chronicles, broadcasting from Blackstone, Virginia, about 50 miles from Richmond. In fact, we're 50 miles from everything. 50 miles from Richmond, 50 miles from Farmville, the next big town, and 50 miles to the south from South Hill. So we're 50 miles from everything, at the center of the world. But then you two are at the center, but I digress. Let's talk about the Queen is dead, long live the King. Fortunately, we got rid of paying $100 a month for direct TV, so we don't watch TV anymore. We watch BritBox and Acorn, British TV, or British detectives, basically. Not the British shows, but just the mysteries, just the who did it, the who done it. That's what we watch. But anyway, I feel very much akin to British culture, since all we watch is British detectives trying to find out who did it. But anyway, so right now, I know if your TV is on, it's with the pageantry and the ritual of the death of the monarch and the installation of the new monarch for life. You see, that's what the monarchy is a God-man. In other words, the monarchy combines God and man in one person. But that person in England is no longer God. They got Parliament. So the interesting sustainability of the English society is that after 1,000 years of conflict, they finally figured out how to separate the king, who had ruled by divine right and who was all powerful, from the people. So now the people elect Parliament, and Parliament has the power to pass laws and control society through regulations or whatever. And that's always combative, but it is contained because the monarchy is its reference. You have to get a vision of this in the sense that the Parliament and the society is kind of like a yin-yang going round and around and around. Who's up today? Who's elected today? They do something and it's no good, so the other guy comes in and he does something, and that's good or no good, and the other one comes in. So it's like a merry-go-round, or it's like a teeter-totter, right? It's like a teeter-totter. Now, what they did was they separated Parliament from the monarch, and they put the monarch on the park bench. So you go to a playground. You got the teeter-totter going up and down, Parliament, society, and you got the monarch is the parent who sits on the park bench. And the kids all look to the parent, and they're so proud to each one reference the parent, but the parent doesn't do anything. The parent just watches with kind of like with amusement, like Queen Elizabeth. You see, she, the king, is a presence, kind of like a parent whose approval you want, but who will never interfere. So the king cannot interfere in the playground, but the king's presence keeps the playground from becoming a civil war where each side shoots the other. You see, so by the king's presence, by this reference to the whole, by keeping your reference to that, this allows the playground to go up and down with civility, with decorum, with a sense of manners, with a sense of play. With play, you see. So the Parliament, so the English system always seems to have this reference to good manners. Why does my light keep shifting here? So the reference to the king or queen is like the reference to the parent who is sitting on the sofa, and the kids, when they get a little bit too crazy, you know, they reference the parent and calm down. The parent makes them remember who they are. But without that parent, you see, the kids may really kill each other. And that's civil war. Civil war is when the parts of society split and each one believes their part is the real society, so they have to remove the other part. So what prevents that civil war in England is the monarchy. Now the founding fathers, you see, were in a pickle because they wanted to separate themselves from the king. He was so far away, and he was imposing English needs over American needs, which were different. So they decided to cut the rope and be free, but what are they going to create, you see? Another monarchy. That's all humanity knew at the time, as far as a social system in Europe, was the monarchy, or an empire, like Napoleon. But Napoleon was after the revolution, so the only model they had was a monarchy. So they couldn't have another monarchy because they wanted to cut loose from that. So they created a clock. God, you know, the founding fathers were deists. They were children of the Enlightenment, and they saw the world in a new way than the Middle Ages, and suddenly nature was there for the fixing and the discovery. Everything was discoverable now. So man was suddenly conscious of nature as separate from nature. And you didn't need God. You went to reason and you went to science in order to fix nature. Where in the Middle Ages, you couldn't fix nature. You just asked God to fix it. God was the boss. God was the king. He would do it, you see. So suddenly man had the reins to his own power. So they had to come up with a system that would capture that balance, and their idea was a clock. So God created the world, give him that, and he created it as a clock which perfectly balances the forces of society, wound it up, and let it go. But then God said in his eminent wisdom, I can't interfere. So like the monarch, you see, the monarch cannot interfere in society with Parliament. So the forces of Parliament go round and around, tick-tock, you see, coming up with time, coming up with history, and the monarch sits aside, impervious to time, outside of time. So when you're in the clock, in time, going round and around, electing this, electing that, getting rid of this, the reference is always to the timeless monarch, the creator, the source. But this monarch is powerless. So the American system, hope I'm just winging it here, the American system created a clock in which the king was inside the clock and the king is president. But instead of the president being by birth, we kill him off every 4 years and elect a new one. So every 4 years, our king is dead and we elect a new one. And the power to create laws lies with Congress, you see. So they kind of like took the monarch, that idea, and put it in the clock. But there is always the tendency, the temptation for a king to switch to the other system and become the monarch. Because the clock gets too messy and it's not working. So I want to fix it. Anyway, I digress. We're getting back to the king. We're getting back to the king as a metaphor. What? And Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, if you watch The Crown, I'm sure that's going to get a little momentum now, which was about the life of Elizabeth, was all about the conflict between nature and duty and her surrender to duty. She was constantly surrendering to the metaphor, to the ritual, to the duty of the monarch to sit on the park bench and not interfere in the teeter-totter of the kids in Parliament. So her power, which Elizabeth understood, was in not doing anything. Her power was being useless. You know, say we're useful by saying, well, do something useful. So if there's a conflict in society, well, the king should come in and straighten it out. Be useful. Don't just sit there on the park bench. You see, it's always a complaint. What use is the monarchy? Well, its uselessness is because it is useless. That's hard to get a logic around it, but when you think about it, whatever is most useless in your life is most valuable. You might value your teddy bear. Totally useless, but you love your teddy bear. Or your dog, your pet. Most valuable. If the house is on fire, you save that pet. The pet's totally useless. It's not a working dog. It doesn't pull the sled. It doesn't catch the rabbits. It doesn't do anything useful. Or you can say, well, it does, but that's the idea. You know. So the pet is so useless that it's most valuable. Anyway. So I digress, but think about that as we watch the pomp and ceremony of the death of the Queen and the birth of the King. So each king is a new era in England. All of the eras, the chapters of their history, is titled by the king who was in power. Edwardian period, the Victorian period. You see, the reign of the Elizabethan period. You know, so these kings are kind of like the chapters of history, yet they don't do anything. They're a metaphor that unites the society without interfering in it. Anyway, thanks for dropping in. See you tomorrow.